first solo podcast. I think not really the first one, but first one since I started doing taking chances. And so I just threw into Grok AI, what are the top three topics this week on podcasts? Because I was like, well, what am I going to talk about? I can talk about myself, which I can definitely do, and I did on the last podcast, but I feel like on the one that I did with Tracy, there was so much other stuff. I mean, we could have talked for like 3 hours, and I will go into some of the stuff that I want to, I guess, re-talk about that have to do with maybe some other things that happened in the storytelling during my life that we didn't get into, and I'm going to talk about those. But here's what Grok said. I love Grok. I don't know if you guys have X or use AI, but so the first topic that's trending this week is the NFL and MLB. So MLB World Series, Dodgers won, and I have to say, like, I didn't watch, I don't think one single game all year, but I always watched the World Series, and it was pretty exciting. I was just at coffee with Austin, and we were talking about the Bears game, and I told him to ask Tracy what happened in our living room while I was watching the Bears game last week, because that Bears game was ridiculous. The ending was insane. I was literally jumping up and down in the living room, even though I'm not a super fan. I'm a fan of football, and that game was pretty exciting at the end. Um, so that's number one. Number one was NFL Bears. MLB was um, the World Series. The second topic is cryptocurrency, and I've been thinking about it for a while in terms of should I invest. It's pretty expensive to get in. I listened to podcasts about it, but I listened to Theo Vaughn and this past weekend, and he had an ad for a it's like a Robinhood, but for crypto, and I can't remember the name of it. Sorry, but where you can, I think you can do it on all these platforms, but you can buy pieces of a Bitcoin. I haven't taken that leap yet. I'm not sure if I will. I mean, I don't know if you looked at crypto and what Bitcoin is, but it's like $100,000 or higher. I think it was at 60,000 last year, and it's over 100 now. I don't think I want to invest $100,000 in one Bitcoin, but maybe. The third thing, which is interesting topic, is politics and the role of AI. Um, and I think what my observation has been, and this is coming from someone that grew up in a Irish Catholic family where, you know, nobody really talked about their feelings out with each other, right? Like whether it was, with your brother, with your parents, it was just like this kind of a code or unwritten rule that you just didn't talk about things, especially when people avoided was politics and religion. And through the years of meeting people and friends that I have and conversations I've had, I feel like that's the reason why we're in kind of this situation that we're in today is because people are avoiding to talk about political issues with each other, especially with someone on the opposing side. And it's like taboo to talk about things, and I don't agree with that. I feel like if you want to have a path towards a better, let's call it discourse society, you need to talk about things that either bother you or that you want to voice your opinion about with others. And you know, I think that I think it's a Greek saying, and I can't remember who said it, but there's no greater man that's feared than the one that speaks the truth. Now, I can attest to that. I've gotten myself into trouble where I have that no bullshit detector and speak the truth, and people are intimidated by that and they're scared by that. So they kind of like plot against you because you see through their bullshit and you call them to the carpet and they just crumble. But politics in general, I was thinking about it, how you always hear, don't bring politics into this. They're bringing politics into this. And what the fuck does that even mean when someone says they're bringing politics into it. Um, I don't think there's a political candidate, Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever party, that doesn't make it political, right? You know, but that was the top three. AI, my take on AI, um, is that based on what I just heard on Joe Rogan's podcast. Joe Rogan had on Elon Musk, and they talked about AI. So I started thinking about technology and innovation and through the history of like the Industrial Revolution. And Elon had a quote, and I can't remember who said it, but oh, I think it was Milton Friedman, who I'm an economics guy. Milton Friedman, he was an economist, but they were talking about, digging ditches with a shovel. And he made this comparison like, hey, let's say conservatives were saying, well, maybe we should use an excavator instead of 10 people with a shovel. We'll just use one excavator. And that was like the threat of AI or the threat of technology, the threat of losing jobs, right? Like you're going to go from 10 people who are working digging with shovels to one guy, an operator, and an excavator. And then it's also going to save significant amount of time. And the socialists were saying, well, if we're going to pay and we need to create jobs, why not have them dig with a spoon? So you go from 10 guys digging with a shovel to like 100 people digging with a spoon. Don't even know how to interpret that, but it's basically what they were talking about on Rogan's podcast with Elon. And, you know, when I first heard about the capabilities of AI, I was with a coworker. We were at an event, and this is probably 3 years ago, maybe four, going on 4 years ago, probably. And when OpenAI or ChatGPT came out, ChatGPT, you could type in, anything, and it would spit out this insane amount of data, and that was scary. So then, when I run, I have a lot of time to think about things when I'm running. And one of the things I started to think about was, okay, throughout history, if you went back to read the newspaper from, like the 1800s, or like, I don't know when Ford created the assembly line, but if you were to read the newspaper back then, I'm pretty sure it was probably a lot of the conversations were what we're talking about today, meaning jobs are going to get eliminated. And then, okay, if that happens, then what are they gonna do? Where are they gonna work? Of the people their job gets eliminated. So, there's talk of, well, there'll be other jobs that are created, and I don't know if that's true. Like, I don't know if you were an assembly line worker, and next thing you know, or you weren't, like if you were, instead of this mass production, if you were just, like Porsche or BMW that touted that they made, handmade cars for a long time versus, robots and robotic welding and all that. Anyway, like what do you do if are those skills transferable? And probably not. So I don't know. I'm talking gibberish kind of to myself here about it, but like from a, where are the jobs and like how much we as a country have like exported manufacturing, it's just wild to think about what's going to happen in 5 years, never mind 10 years. And Elon's talk or his idea on this whole thing was to some kind of eventually AI will take over almost everything except for physical jobs. And there'll be some kind of a utopia in terms of like getting people paid. I don't know. It's a bunch of bullshit. I don't know. But that's what the top three topics were. That's kind of like my interpretation on those. But I feel like the one that kind of sticks out to me is the political one where, I didn't even know growing up what political party my parents were in because they didn't talk about it. That's how crazy it was. Like it wasn't like they said, "Hey, we're Republicans or we're Democrats and we're going to vote this way." I have an idea to this day. I don't think, other than my dad, sharing what he shared on the podcast we did, his thoughts on it. he has a different perspective, I think, from a lot of people because he started out in manufacturing, and he's throughout his career like what unions can either help or hurt companies. And I think I remember saying, you can be a liberal, you can be a Democrat uh, until you start having to pay taxes. And then if you don't care where your money goes, that's your choice. But I think if you were to ask people to say, hey, do you end up, do you know where your money, your, when you get your paycheck and you see a deduction for federal income tax, state income tax, do you know where that money is going? I'd say high level people kind of assume they know. But if you get into the details, it's crazy to think about where the money's going. And then when you hear about fraud and waste, and people kind of brush it off, and it's like, no, 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 no. That is a known issue. And anyway, what I'm getting at is if once you start pay taxes, you kind of relook at what kind of a party do you want to support? Is it more government or less government? I think that's really the crux of Democrat, Republican, or conservative and liberal. And Elon's take on it was that the liberal or the left has gone so far left that they can't even see the middle with a telescope, is what his statement was. And I think you could say that same thing. There are definitely people that are so far to the right that they couldn't even see the middle with a telescope either. But the less people talk about it with each other and have discourse, the more problems are going to be created because you are being fed and manipulated through media on what you're either going to watch Fox or you're going to watch CNN or you're going to watch all this crap. And I don't know if, no, I didn't talk about this, but I do remember when I knew there was media bias. I had to take a class at North Shore Community College, and it was media and it was writing and all that. But the teacher was talking about how the media has a bias, and I was like, "What are you talking about?" I didn't believe it. And then as I got older, meaning like 15, 16, 17, and I started to see like, okay, there was in Boston, the Boston Herald and the Boston Globe. I liked the Herald, but didn't know it was the, say, right-wing paper, and the Globe was like the liberal paper. But I liked how the Herald read, like it was like a book. You opened it up from, it was like a little square and you opened it up like a book. And the Globe was like the one that you had to unfold and then read it as like a newspaper book. But that was the difference. If you read the Herald, you were kind of that right way, and if you read the Globe, you were the left way leaning. And that's kind of when I realized that there is a bias. And then I think there's, classes that I had to take about unconscious biases, and that they ain't going away. You're not going to ever eliminate somebody from having an opinion, right? You're not going to ever eliminate that. Um, it's just that you get attacked sometimes for having an opposing opinion, and then never, if you're not willing to talk about the differences, like I said in the beginning of this, when people they say don't talk about politics, you're gonna assume a lot of stuff, right? You're gonna assume that just because someone drives a certain car that they're a certain way. And it's the whole thing about don't judge a book by its cover and all that kind of crap. But I'll end all that kind of BS shit and start to kind of talk more about the podcast, taking chances, and why I'm doing this solo one is because a couple things fell through, and people that I wanted to have on have plans change, and I get it, things come up, so I'm doing this one by myself. I want to talk about running because I think that was the kind of the beginning of a lot of the podcasts had to do with running. A lot of them had to do with Leadville. And I'll just share my newest kind of running adventure. I'm trying to think of ways to stay busy, not working. So running has been my therapy for a long time, and it's going to continue to be my avenue to, not vent, but to de-stress, I'll call it. And going for a run in the morning when you wake up is a pretty good way to start your day. So I did that calendar club thing, but I didn't do it for the whole month. It got really hard, and that's, I mean, it got really hard. I kind of just stopped because I was like, all right, I got to 20 days in a row, and it started getting a little bit more difficult after mile 15. So what it was is, on the first I ran 1 mile, on the second I ran 2 miles, the third I ran 3 miles. So fast forward to day 15, it's the 15th, and I wake up, I run 15 miles. And that takes a long time. And then the next day was 16, and I'm like, man, then the next day was 17, then the next day was 18, and then 19, then 20. And at that point, I had run, like 230 miles and 20 days consecutively for the first time in my life. I don't think I've run more than 7 days in a row in my life up to this point. And it was, I just did it on a whim. It wasn't something I planned on, I was going to do like, hey, this October, I'm going to do this run. I'm going to do this calendar club. It was just like, okay, I'm running. Let me just put a new challenge out there. I'm going to probably do it again, and I want to try to go through the whole month, and that I'll be prepared the next time I do it. So I took 3 days off, and I started this new thing. I thought, well, let me modify it a little bit and do this crazy. Okay, I did 3 miles. I'll do 3 miles for 3 days in a row. I'll do 4 miles for 4 days in a row. I'll do 5 miles for 5 days in a row. And I'm on my first day of running six. So I did the three, I did the four, I did the five. So now I'm on 6 miles, and I'll do that for 6 days. And so far, I think it's a little bit more manageable. It's the consecutive days, which is hard to do. So what is that? 3, 4, 7, and 5 is 12. 13 days in a row again, after doing 20 in a row, taking three off. And what's mentally, it's the day-to-day thing that's hard. The consistency is good, but it's not as far, right? Like I don't have to run, 7, 8, 9, 10, and keep adding on to it. It's just I know I got to do 6 miles for 6 days, and then seven for 7 days. And I think when I added it up from because I started kind of the beginning of November, I was already on five. So it's going to end up still being like 200 and something miles if I do it through the end of the month. So that's the thing I'm on right now from a running standpoint. I was just at coffee with Austin, and we were talking about like what's a race that you got, we want to do, what's next. Rich Russell had texted the group about doing the Wausau Limitless again next year. And I don't know, kind of got mixed feelings on that one because it was so hard. And then Austin and I were talking about trying to do something sooner than that, meaning like, December, January, maybe somewhere warm. So gonna do some research and look on Ultra Sign Up, see what's out there. Um, Switching gears totally. Uh, I did write a book, and it was hard to do, and I struggled because I'm not that great a writer. I thought it would be easy. I didn't think it was gonna be easy. What am I talking about? I knew it was gonna be hard, but it's hard to, it's like running, right? If you don't run, consistently, you're gonna say it's hard to run a half marathon or a marathon. Same thing with writing. You got to dedicate the time to sit down and do it. And that was hard for me to focus. I have trouble focusing. I have a lot of struggles I've had growing up and through school was my inability at that time to focus. So it forced me to focus on writing, and I was writing and step back a second and talk about how I learned how to read really well was my dad said, look, start to read something you like to read about, and that was like reading the sports page in the newspaper. So writing is similar. It's like I remember taking writing classes, and the assignments were, write about something you like to do, or that kind of thing, right? So the topic was me, so that was pretty easy, and it was a historical biography kind of story. And it's interesting because I think in the beginning of it, I talk about how the question that the book kind of answers somewhat was, did my life prepare me mentally and physically to take this challenge on? And I said yes. And then did the race prepare me for what came after? And I say yes. So if you missed that and you read the book and you're like, this is a piece of shit, I can talk about that. I could say, look, you know what? It is kind of shittily, it's not written really well because I ADHD fucking wrote it in Word and then had to convert it and all this other crap. And then I edited it myself and did it all myself through Amazon Publishing. And I got to the point where I was like, okay, just be done with it. Just be done with it. Just be done with it. So it's not the best and most well-written story, but it's just like a bunch of different stories that lead up to what I think helped me and prepared me to run this race. So when it says the Leadville 100, right? But it's taking chances. Why not you? So here's the fucked up part. I did it. It's on Amazon, hardcover or like soft cover, whatever, and also ebook. And then I never looked back. I never went back to Amazon. I never looked to see how many people bought it or any of that until someone had asked me to send a link for the ebook recently, like last week. So I went on there on Amazon and I was like, oh shit, there's one comment. And I said, oh, let me read that comment. So let me pull up the comment and I'm going to talk about it because it was like um, interesting. It says something like, I can't find it. It said something like, this guy wrote a comment, and I don't remember his off the top of my head the screen name, but it said something like, it's the worst book he ever read, and that there's 1,000 other books better if you want to learn about Leadville. Don't read this book. He talks about growing up and what his childhood was like. And I was like, first, I was like, fuck you. You don't even know like why I wrote it. I get it, right? That's your opinion. Fantastic. Again, we talked about it earlier on this stupid show, a podcast about how if you want to have a discussion about it, I would gladly get on the phone and talk to you and explain my why I wrote it, right? And what it's about and what the story is. Yeah, 90% of it was me, like a biography of me with my brothers and my dad and my mom and all this stuff that's happened to me. That was, I feel like, mentally preparing me for a 100-mile race. If you're looking for the minutia details about Leadville, I've talked about it multiple times on this show, and we don't even get into a lot of the details about when I talked about it with John Byrne, with John DeDonker, with Kurt Johnston, with Evan Kilstrom, with myself, last podcast with Tracy. I could do a 3-hour podcast on the race, my experience with the race, but it would probably be boring to 90% of the people that are listening. So it's a similar thing with this book. It's about point in time, um, and leading up to that race and how I kind of leveraged everything that I went through and mentally was able to finish it. That's the deal. But anyway, it was in one negative comment. So what I'll say about that is that people that are out there on social media and people that are out there that have podcasts and write books and make movies and all that, you're going to get criticized. And I did. I got criticized and I took it personal and I was like, fuck that. That's stupid. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, the guy's right. I was a shitty writer. It's not the best written book. Um, I told a story. And I think his expectations were he wanted to read it and fucking be able to figure out how to finish Leadville. Well, if you want to call me, I'll tell you what I did and what everybody else did and how we prepared for it. But this was just more about me writing a book because I had time. I wanted to focus on putting, words to paper, and that's why I did it, and that's what I wrote about. Um, and that was just my take on it. But it pissed me off, frustrated me, but it made me think, okay, this is what my makeup is. If I'm gonna hear that criticism, I'm going to do something about it. So I started rewriting the book. I said, okay, if it's that bad, which I know there's a lot of room for editing in it, if it's that bad, I'm going to rewrite it. And I'm telling you right now, if this book is how many pages? Say it's 100 pages. I left out about 100 pages. So I'm going to take those other 100 pages and I'm going to weave them back in to the story because there's a lot of stuff in here in the story that I didn't tell. A lot of it, a lot of stuff. Same thing with last week when I did the podcast with Tracy. There's a lot of stuff I didn't talk about. And we did talk about ahead of time when I interviewed her and when she interviewed me, like that weren't, it's not like we weren't gonna, it was taboo, we weren't gonna talk about it, but most of it has to do with relationships that we've had, especially marriage, right? So everybody that knows me, I got divorced in 2019. Tracy, same thing. She got divorced, and um, you know, I don't know too many divorces that end amicable or like that end because they got along, right? You end a marriage or you end the relationship because things are going wrong. Um, I can tell you a couple of little anecdotal type things that, not throwing uh, my ex under the bus, but like those are the things that we didn't talk about. But I feel like I didn't talk about them in this, but they also helped me mentally um, get through this race because I went through some uh, some stuff. Um, let's see. Um, so um, totally, I'm going to switch topics again. I am I've been writing like I love comedy. I've been writing some like skits and jokes and stuff like that forever. I've got in my phone, I've got notes that are probably, I don't know, hundreds of little comedy things I write down. Um, it's just pages and pages of stuff. Uh, and that to me is something that I would be interested in either writing jokes for somebody or start maybe try to do a stand-up like comedian type thing, but I know how hard it is and it's super hard. I don't have a problem talking in front of people, like up on a stage with a microphone, but I have a problem memorizing shit, and I think it would be really hard for me to do it unless I practiced for like a year and told like three stories or jokes. But that's kind of what I've been thinking about lately is that is trying to do something like that maybe. Um, yeah, that's it. Those are the things it's just a quick little 30-minute solo podcast on a bunch of junk. But I wanted to share that, it's amazing how things kind of everyone gravitates towards the negative, right? Like, you could do nine things right and one thing wrong, and people are going to jump all over you for that one thing. Um, you could be early for work 360 days, but you're late once and you're going to get in trouble. It's just, I talked about this with John Byrne too. Like, there's this, I think he was the original one that originally sent that post about like Einstein, and it's probably a fake story, but Einstein, one of the smartest guys ever to live, wrote like some equations on the board, and again, I think it's just a story, but it's kind of put it into perspective of like the guy that's the smartest guy in the world writes, one times one, two times two, three times three, he gets all of them right, and then like the 10th one he gets wrong, and then the students in the classroom like, what an idiot, he got number 10 wrong, and it's like, well, he got all nine right. Um, you know, it's easy to criticize, because like I think it's that misery loves company and people just pile on and want to criticize and gravitate towards the negative versus hey, there's some really good stuff going on. Another quick thing that we were talking about at coffee is how like the media nowadays, and I talk about this with Tracy all the time. I'm like, we're watching the local news and they'll have on a story that you think is local, but it's like from someone in a different country. And I'm not saying I don't care what's going on in a different country, but it definitely starts to influence you on how you think. Like, if there's bad shit going on in the world somewhere else, like, what the fuck can I do about it? Number one. And number two, why are you telling me when my world is 3 feet around me? I want to know what's going on 3 feet, 10 feet around me versus getting in my brain about, hey, look, if you go on Twitter, you can read a million stories about bad shit all over the world. And what do you think that does to you? Versus, hey, you know what? Unless it happens to you, you kind of just should just not ignore it, but, you know, not pay attention. And if they keep putting this in front of you, you're going to feel a certain way. And most of the time, it's you feel shitty. Because there's not a lot of, like, if there was a news station that just reported on good stuff, that'd be pretty good. It'd be pretty cool. The sad part about it is that the news is most of the time bad stuff gets put on the news. Fires, murders, accidents, plane crashes, all this negative stuff gets the publicity. And it's just a shame, but that's what's happening. And the best way to deal with that is just to turn it off. Like you hear these people that are like living off the grid, and I think they're probably pretty happy. You know, um, that's how I'll end this one. Is I'll just say, look, if your goal in life isn't to be happy, well, then what is it? Because at the end of the day, you could have $1 billion or $1,000, but if you're miserable, you're miserable. Um, so I'm trying to find a way to just be happy, and that's where I'm at, just trying to figure out a way to live my life, be happy, be positive-ish, and make sure my girls are taken care of. Um, that's it.